Welcome to About Art. I'm Heidi Zuckerman. Today, I am speaking with a remarkable figure whose passion for art has transformed not only what she collects, but how work is made, supported, and experienced across continents. Elisa Nuyten is a Canadian-based collector, patron, and the founder and president of the Vega Foundation, an organization dedicated to championing ambitious work in artists, film, and video, a medium that is both historically rich and often under-supported. Elisa's collection spans generation and geographies, from Louise Bourgeois and Pierre Huy to Zoe Leonard, and her growing commitments through Vega extend this passion into commissioning, producing, and stewarding new moving image artwork with major partners around the world. We'll talk today about why she works with film and video, how collecting has shaped her curatorial sensibility, what Vega is building for artists now, and the risks and riches of supporting moving image practice in the 21st century. Elisa, thanks so much for being here today. I always like to start off by asking our guests to introduce themselves, and I'll just say that I think you began your collecting journey about 20 years ago, and your practice has evolved really significantly over time. So maybe a great way to introduce yourself to our audience is to talk about how your personal passion for art started.
Thank you. My name is Elisa Nuyten, and I am in Toronto, in Canada, almost snowed in here. And I am originally from Belgium. I grew up in Belgium. I came to Canada in my early 20s. And I have recently relocated part-time to Paris to be closer to my roots. So I share my life is equally divided between here. So I'm always saying I'm Belgian Canadian when people ask me, which is the truth. I like it. I like the fact that I've gone back to my roots, but I love being in Canada too. And my journey in collecting started in my in my 30s when after I had my children, and I decided I used to have a fashion wholesale business called Vitamin Chic, and I would import fashion items mostly from Paris, from Europe. And I had sold that business, so I didn't have anything to return to. And I wanted something intellectual to challenge me. And I had always been attracted to contemporary art, but I didn't know very much about it. And I realized that if I was interested in art, I had to apply myself to it if I wanted to have art on my walls to live with. And so I made a very conscious decision to apply myself to learning about contemporary art by going to see as much art locally and slowly more and more international, and meeting people. Yeah, to this day, a lot of my good friends are curators and directors and artists too. So yeah, my collecting started from a personal perspective, but something, yeah, that I felt I could carry with me for the rest of my life.
It's such a great way of introducing yourself and also letting people know part of how people start and how they form their journeys. And we have collectors on the podcast sometimes, and people come at it from all sorts of different ways. And often it is something that's kind of proximate. So people are interested in or work in entertainment, or they work in fashion or literature. And so there's some kind of adjacency that you have a comfort with your eye, and it's just an expansion into a different arena. So I'm wondering how you think about fashion and art and maybe that idea of having a trained eye and then expanding it.
Yeah, I feel my fashion eye helped me a lot. And I think also my entrepreneurial spirit, the fact that I came to Canada on my own and started my own business, helped me a lot also in, like, I'm not afraid entering new worlds. Like, the art world is always a bit of an opaque world. It's not the most easiest way to enter when you don't know. And so I'm not afraid of that. And also I feel like now my life, yeah, the adjacency with fashion. But I was also going to mention, like, the adjacency with, I collect good design too, like mid-century lamps, and especially in my apartment in Paris. So I find art, the linkage with design and with architecture and with really all art, all art, for all forms of art, also with nature, I find is also really important to me. So I'm interested in marrying it all together for sure too. And then with the Vega Foundation, I've been able to marry it with moving image. I always had an interest in cinema and in film, in artist film, but I just knew it was difficult to collect because I had a few pieces. And so again, like I wasn't afraid to start off in a new medium and start something up from scratch, like a foundation, and go into a different format in a different medium. Because ultimately, for me, they're all so linked. Yeah.
It's so
Everything.
interesting. There are different themes that are kind of coming up on the podcast again and again. This idea of entrepreneurship and female entrepreneurs in particular, and this idea of reinvention and not being afraid to start something new. And also, it often happens that I find I have things in common with people who are on the podcast. So I also love mid-century design, but I collect chairs instead of lamps. But the idea of living with objects is very different than going and visiting them in galleries or in museums. And so being able to kind of bridge that gap to know that you can bring something into your own space and live with it.
Yeah, I think because reflecting on my history, I've always also connected. That's why I wanted to contemporary art, because I very much wanted to be part of the art world and meet the people that are influential in it. And so it was always very much personal and about relationships. And therefore, my first sort of my a big part of my original collecting was relational aesthetics, which so connects with me as a person and even still with Vega, like those films that we do, often they're like whole environments that one walks in too. But yeah, I like relational aesthetics is sort of a good starting point for me to describe my relationship with my social relationship with art.
And that's really when I came into the art world also. And being able to be engaged with people around artwork, which didn't necessarily take a traditional form, but the experience of it was so key. And I'll share a really formative experience for me, and then would love you to do the same, which was going to a really early show by Rikrit Teravanija at 303 Gallery when Lisa Spellman was in Soho on, I think, I don't know, Prince Street or Spring Street. And I mean, I was a kid and I really didn't know what I was going to. And Rikrit had taken everything out of every cabinet, every kind of hidden space, and repurposed it to make an space of dining and experience. And he was there cooking. I don't know if it was every day or a couple days a week, but I never knew that art could be something like that. It could be someone preparing Thai food and serving. And I'm very attracted to this idea of transparency and access and service. And that's what I found within that work. And so I'd love for you to share some experiences that were very important for you in the process of integration into the art world.
It's so funny. Like I had this feeling too that we relate a lot to each other. Like I think in our tastes, and I would say Rick was influential on me absolutely too. And I won't use his example now because I will go to another example, not to repeat his, because I have a good example of his too. But the one that I would say was very influential for me was Pierre Huyghe's show at the Pompidou, like 15 years ago, where he had the black ice skating rink, and he had like there was aquariums. Like he started working with aquariums by then because it came to LACMA LA after that show. But that was, yeah, to see how he took over the space in such a new way was incredible, informative. And since that day, I actually have a small aquarium that I would say is one of the anchors in my collection, which I originally had in Toronto, but it's in Paris now. And it's a square aquarium. It's sat at the corner with a black ice rink, but it's not a complicated saltwater aquarium like with the crabs and and the things that he makes. Like this is just the fish from the Seine. So in Paris, they go fish them out of the Seine to put them in my aquarium. And it's a sweet water aquarium. It doesn't take a ton of upkeep. So I have somebody look at it every 2 weeks, and it's been very lovely. Like I've lived with fish as pets for 12 plus years, and I really relate to them. That's very much part of in my life. The Pierre Huyghe and Philippe Areno followed soon after in Paris too, and then Dominique Gonzalez Fuster also did her show after that. Like they were all sort of in close proximity to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. And yeah, Pierre Huy is for me one of, I can't even say my favorite because it's not even the right word, that he's such a genius. He's such an amazing artist. And I remember that series at the Pompidou, and also the Pierre Huy show at LACMA was so incredible. And the first time I saw one of those aquariums and the sculpture with the crabs, and I just felt different. And that's one of the things that art can do. Sometimes you can find the right words for it, and sometimes it's beyond words because it's a feeling that's so um, that
Yeah, and at the time it was totally new and shocking to see the space of a museum used in that way. So yeah, so we both shared that, as that was sort of our age of coming, like of being in the art world when these were in their heydays. I mean, Pierre continues to do amazing exhibitions, like the one he just opened at Birchen in Berlin. I think I've been talking to a few people that were at the dinner. Like there was 250 people at the dinner from everywhere. Like people just, and then he has a big exhibition coming up at the Baylor, and he has another piece at the Rotunda in La Bourse, the Commerce in Paris.
yes.
Again, the film from Venice.
Mhm.
So he continues to work significantly. Yeah, but he's the most wonderful person too, an amazing artist.
So that work you talked about as an anchor of your collection, what other works would you identify as kind of anchors of your collection?
Yeah, because you had Cecilia Alemani on your podcast, and her Biennale in Venice, like you said already too on your podcast, was one of your favorite biennales.
Right.
Mine too. I went twice. I went back to it, to the finish. I was there for the opening and the closing. And yeah, so how she brought surrealism into contemporary art was for me very exciting and revealing and very new. And I feel like I have a large strength in surrealism now of artists that are living. I mean, these are about post-surrealism and surrealism of artists that are no longer alive. And after, so I would say there was a few works that really influenced me from that Biennale. One in particular was Leonor Fini, like in that grouping with the um, with the older artists. I think she was even with Leonora Carrington in that grouping. But like Leonor Fini, I have that, and I just gave it up again for an exhibition, and I was really missing it and like not having it. So I feel perhaps it's not an anchor in my collection, but it's something I really personally I'm very attached to. It's like a goddess coming out of these sort of rocks in green. It's really abstracted, and it's called Asphodel, like it's a mythic figure, and she comes out of the water into the light, and it's just very feminine energy too. Like it's like a piece I really like living and looking at. So yeah, the surrealism stream, like from is important in my collection, and like I have pieces by Carol Rama, although she would not be exactly surrealist, or Alina Sapochnikov, people
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
And then I feel like I have a lot to relating to Pierre. That is, if Pierre is relational aesthetics, but he's also apocalyptic, post-human, like these environments that he makes talk about a world without humans and what's left. And so I feel my collection speaks to that too. And again, also in Sicily Biennale, like Andra Ursuta, Matthew Barney, that post-apocalyptic. Who else? Oh yeah, Marguerite Dumont. So yeah, that speaks to that. Nairi Bahranian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
I mean, a lot of these artists were in Cecilia's Biennale. Like I feel like Andrea Ussata, yeah. I
Yeah,
love that.
and go ahead.
I loved your talk with her on
Thank
the
you.
podcast.
Yeah, she's great. I just was so taken by that Biennale. And, I've known her a long time and we were social friends for a long time. And of course, I've seen a lot of her projects and admire her. And I just thought that Biennale was a tour de force. So it was just amazing. So I love to hear you talk about the artists that are in your collection. And I'm a fan of some of the female surrealists too. One of the last shows that I did at the Orange County Museum of Art was a Leonora Finney and Leonora Carrington show.
No.
Yeah, it was amazing. So there's a collector here in Orange County and was introduced through a friend, and he's not a contemporary collector really, and he brought a binder and was showing me what he had, and I couldn't believe that he lives with all of these works. And he couldn't believe that I knew all the artists so well. So anyway, it was a really amazing opportunity to show a big grouping of these artists. And you learn so much about someone based on what they're interested in. And to hear your description, which is totally apt, about Pierre Huy, with starting with relational aesthetics and then moving into this idea of post-human, and we're living at such a strange time. And sometimes I think people want the art and the artist to be more reactive to what's happening. But I never think that art is great. I think that people and art can be responsive, but not reactive. And so the work that you're describing is responsive. And for me, the difference there, or the definition, is to really sit with the discomfort and to kind of allow it to permeate one's consciousness and then to respond from that. And so the work that you're describing, that you're drawn to, I think very much does that. And I'd love to, I don't know, hear maybe your thoughts on the world and art right now, and how maybe I don't want to make any assumptions that it's helping you find solace or understanding or whatnot, but I just love to know how it helps you now.
Yeah, we have to come to our world right now because we're living in quite a world. I feel very blessed in ways that I have the foundation, the Vega Foundation, because we are able to work with a lot more artists than I can collect. And I find a lot of younger artists work with film, and they can be more experimental, but also much more political in film. And so I really like to have that as a counterbalance to my collecting. And especially in the world right now, I feel like I can use Vega as a vehicle for not for change, but for awareness, like for making people more exposed to things, like because people do look at film in ways that has more impact. Often, I feel like if I see, I mean, now I'm going to use the Nan Golden because I was just in Milan and I saw her show, and just sitting to some of those films again that like her new one, especially the Stendhal Syndrome, and how nobody left, like there was film after film in this hangar, like it's actually coming to Paris and at the Grand Palais, but it was at the Bicocca in Milan. And to see people sit through these films, like from one film to the next, like, and not leave throughout, was amazing. And at Lucy Raven here in Toronto, like it's a half an hour film. It's a beautiful film about this dam that is removed in California, and then the river starts flowing again. So you see the blasting of the dam, and then you see the water like sort of coming through with that force that water does, and then you follow the water back to the Pacific Ocean, and it's sort of beautiful it's beautiful in the landscape, but it's at the same time a very political film about like what people did and against the indigenous people, because like the indigenous people, their salmons were given up by putting in this dam, and how they now get their river back, and all the and yeah, how something like that is both very political, although that's not on the surface of it. It's only if you know the backstory you can appreciate it at many levels. But yeah, so in film one can have a voice that that is powerful. Yeah, like, and also very. We've been working with a lot of artists too, like Lapsi Lam or Stephanie Comilang, that work in these fantastical worlds, like sort of surreal, very with like puppets and drawing and very layered like that. And that's also really nice because it escapes you into a dream world too. That is the opposite of reality. But it talks about real issues, like in Stephanie Comelang, the Philippines, and in Lapsilam's, the Hong Kong histories, myths. So yeah, I feel that's my link to really the world, to sort of try to do something about participating and not trying to do, sorry, participating in the world is, I find my involvement in Vega with the Vega Foundation is very important. Therefore, yeah.
Yeah. We talk a lot on the podcast about the difference between art and other creative mediums in terms of access and what people feel is more available to them. And people are trained to look at moving images, from television, to traditional movies to YouTube and TikTok, right? So it is, I think, important to be able to use a medium that people are comfortable with to not necessarily provide the same kind of information or content that they're used to. And I love this idea of bringing beauty, because part of the works that you were talking about, the Nan Golden work, I mean, that's really about finding beauty again.
Yeah.
And, what happens when we've been so removed from things that are beautiful and then being reintroduced to them. And I also like what you said about the fact that there's a political undercurrent. It's not hitting anyone over the head, but it's also sharing a story that people might not be familiar with and asking questions about who's making decisions and who's being impacted by the decisions that are being made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't look for that necessarily, but we don't shy away about from that. And I feel most artists have a political voice, really, and I feel in film they can say it. It gives them more space to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the Pierre Huy film where it's very post-apocalyptic, very post-human. I can't remember the title, but where there's like a chimpanzee who's, walking around and it doesn't tell you anything directly. It's really up to you to see what you're experiencing and what you're looking at and how you feel about it. And that kind of ambiguity and openness, I think, is something that really can be found in art and benefits all of us. So
And that is
the
the that withstands the time too. Would you say the art that leaves that
For sure. Yeah, for
ambi
sure.
ambiguity?
Yeah, the ambiguity for sure, because I don't I don't really think anyone, I mean, maybe it's just being a Gen Xer, but I never like to be told what to do or what to think.
Hmm.
And I don't know really anyone who does.
Hmm.
So I think that's for me where didactic art becomes a problem, right? Because I don't want to be told what to think. So I want to be in conversation. I want to be in dialogue. I want the opportunity to learn new things and to have my mind changed, but on my
On my
own.
own terms. Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, like I also feel like with the foundation, apart from being able to respond to the world, I also feel in this moment of institutional restraint, like where institutions have less money from the from governments, which is everywhere the case, there is so much opportunity and need for private foundations or private projects. So other projects, like different ways of looking at thing at ways different ways of looking at fundraising to finish a project, to be able to do great work. So it feels with the Vega Foundation, we entered at a moment where it was very much needed, and we thrive on coming in very early in a project with an artist. Like Lucy Raven would be a prime example of that, how she was hiring helicopters and paying for it on her own visa, and she really was quite far into she was into this film, but she didn't know how she was going to get out of it because it was becoming more expensive and there was no funding. So we came in at this moment, and this relatively early moment, but very crucial moment where she saw was in need of the funding to be able to continue, and that feels so worthwhile to be able to finish, to help an artist finish a project like that. And so I feel that's also part of this new world that is changing so much so rapidly, is like finding new models for exhibition making, for funding, for art making, like just every.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about some of the collaborations that Vega has done with institutions like the Serpentine, like MoMA, like the Power Plant, and even the Venice Biennale. And I, I'm wondering how these partnerships with major institutions are really influencing your vision of what Vega's role can be in the broader ecosystem.
Yeah, we find each partnership is so different, so it's very educational. Each one is so different because we have different partners and structures. And in some cases, we co-commission, and in some cases, we co-acquire with the museum too. Like we've done that now with the National Gallery, with the Vancouver Art Gallery. So it's a lot of like sort of figuring out these contracts between all the parties too. And that is actually an essential part of working like this because of these new relationships that are created. You need to know where each one stands and have the boundaries and have that very explicit, because otherwise it won't come to a good ending, I feel. So we become very good at communication and writing out with the other parties, like what what the expectations are. So we come out of this relationship always very, so far, very positive. Like we were a bit worried about working with MoMA because it's such a big machine and that they would treat us just as little guys, like, but that was almost one of the best collaborations. Like it went so smooth and they shared everything with us. They put us in all their press. Like we've been working in Toronto with the power plant. This is our fourth show with them now. And that has been a dream too. This last show and the previous one, we have co-curated with them, co-commissioned, co-produced. Like, so we are totally equal partners. Each partnership is different, but that's also very fun and exciting too. Like we don't have a book of guidelines or whatever. Like here we're working on a great multi-institutional show with Diego Marcon, his new film, and it just showed at the Renaissance Society in Chicago, and now it will open in Paris at Lafayette, and then at the new museum or at the AGO in Toronto. The new museum dates is still a little unset because of their opening dates being a bit longer, but the project and then the Sandretto Rebodengo Foundation is also involved in the commission. So it's like five partners like
It's
that in all
amazing.
parts of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
It's very fun and interesting. And in the beginning, it's a bit complicated. Like you have to work it out. But I think we all very pleased about this collaboration. It's not final. It's not finished yet. We just started the one exhibition at the Renaissance Society. But Vega has worked together with the Renaissance Society in Chicago a few times already. I'm on that board too for full exposure. I'm good friends with the director, Miriam Bensala, but and the same, I'm on the board of the new museum too. So indirectly, I have perhaps a bit of an insight in these museums. I love to work together with the Louvre. Like I'm not afraid of any big museum anymore. No.
Yeah. I think it goes back to something that you were talking about at the start, which is this idea of being an entrepreneur. And what entrepreneurs can do is they can see a path forward that other people can't. Working with MoMA and having that be clear and excellent is not at all surprising because, Glenn is, I mean, I think he was the best museum director in the world, really. And he shares a value of mine, which is that, clarity is kindness. And, being able to be clear is really the best way to be, and to be able to talk about things, even if they're complicated or makes someone uncomfortable, to be able to be clear in all those conversations. So if you have that as a guiding principle, then you can work all these things out. And you're quite right. This is such an unusual time, and because of some of the challenges of the economics of institutions, there's opportunity for collaboration and partnership and co-commissioning and co-acquisition in ways that some of us were interested in for a long time, but there were others that just thought that's not how it was done. And being able to, sometimes that the kind of pressure opens things up to a new way of doing things, and to have, a multi continent collaboration. And that was something I was always trying to do, that to be able to build these partnerships in different countries on different continents, to be able to share programming, and working in moving image media makes that easier than having to ship paintings or sculpture or whatnot. So what are some of the projects that you're, I don't know, I guess most proud of?
I feel I've talked so much about Lucy already, but that would be because I was so she to this day, like we have such a close rapport with her. We become such good friends, and she's so grateful for us, and that's something that's deeply engraved forever. But also Lapsi, but now working with Diego on these future shows is also already so rewarding, and he's such a lovely person. And to work with Massimiliano Gioni at the New Museum, Miriam Bensala at the Renaissance, like the new leader, Clément at Lafayette, like he just started, but I know him from Art Basel. It's like a great group of partners. To we also working on a new film with Martin Sims, who, I mean, you must know really well from your part of, but I'm really excited about that too. And we just also have another great collaboration with Diane Nguyen, the Vietnamese artist, and that is with Haus der Kunst, with Andrea Lissoni and Lauren Cornell at the Bart Institute or the Hessel Institute. And Vega, like co-commissioning this new film of her that will be opening at Haus der Kunst first, and it's actually being filmed in Bavaria, in that part of Germany, also with helicopters and stuff, like a big production budget. A step up for this artist again. So we came in at a really nice moment in this artist's career, where this happens often, like, right, because artists they've plateaued off and they want to sort of reach higher, and they need more funds to make that next
Yeah.
step. So Diane is an example of that. Like, this is a much bigger production for her. Lapsi was like that too. It was a much bigger production. Stephanie Komelang was like that. Yeah, we've done a few of those artists where we've helped them go to the next
So
step.
sometimes people ask me what I've learned from artists, from years of conversations and exhibition making and whatnot. What are some of the things that you've learned from artists that you take into the rest of your life?
Yeah, to be appreciative, to be appreciative of everything in life, perhaps to look more slower and more in detail at things too, which I still have to force myself a bit to do that. Like, I'm not fast like but I am. And so, yeah, they look at things in such precise ways, but very poetic at the same time. And at nature, I mean, they see things that, I mean, I see too. Like, I must not say, like, I do see a lot of that stuff too. But they point it out, or they take me to a place where, perhaps that's right, they will take me to a place where really my soul feels really good, like where I feel really good. Yeah. And I realize I connect, where we connect. Yeah. I'm not an artist, but I could be. I mean, I couldn't be an artist, but I do feel I connect with artists at that level then, like where we connect, like where I feel I'm part of them, or I'm part of that, or yeah. I don't know if I make sense saying this.
Yeah. I think artists think differently. And I often say how much gratitude I have from, a career spent with artists. I'm an artist curator, an artist director, an artist companion. Some people love the objects, and I love the objects, but really I love the artists. That's what draws me to the relationships and to the projects.
Yeah. I used to have a lot of curator friends. I mean, I still have a lot of curator friends too. I'm very interested too in the intellectual conversations with curators, but then you could have them with artists equally well too. But yeah, I do feel the art world is like a very nice world for me. Like I feel very at ease, like I belong there. Like it's like a world I like to be in. I feel good in, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's an important point to emphasize because you referenced at the start of the conversation that you didn't necessarily know how to enter it at first, and then you
Hmm.
found a place that feels
Hmm.
like home for you, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it's also a kind of a reminder for people to be courageous, right? And to pursue things and people and opportunities and go to places that they're interested in. And so what advice would you, and I kind of hate that word because I always feel like advice is what you pay for, but what kind of suggestions would you have for people that are looking to get started? Or are there things that you wish you had been told when you were starting that you could share now?
Yeah, I think it's like what you said, like don't be afraid to go out there to look, but also engage in conversation with artists, directors, creators when you have the opportunity. Don't be afraid of those conversations because that is, I think, a bit intimidating too, or a lot intimidating at first. And then, yeah, just to travel for it, but like traveling can be far or close. Like you don't need to go too far often to see art. And the other thing I always think too is like there's so many artful moments in life, in nature. And just to go for walks in nature too, like and look at it with that eye that sees where you see things, and with ears that hear the sounds, and like with all the senses and like fully open. Like I think that also trains you to be good at functioning in the art world too. I like a lot of artists actually that are involved with nature. That I find a lot of artists that I like, they spend a lot of time in nature. Yeah.
Yeah, I love nature. And I often say I'm not sure which I love more, art or nature. And what you're talking about is the fact that access to art and spending time with artists, it just gives us some guidance on how to live, really, which is to pay attention and be aware and notice.
That's yeah, exactly. Like I feel in today's world we need more of that. Like I feel with all the technology and all the social media, and we're losing a lot of human contact. And I want to promote a more humanity again in the world, and really think about that and say that out loud, because I feel we'll be losing that, and we have to be aware that we have to work on it because we're becoming more and more like insulated and robotic in ways, and it can happen so fast. And so yeah, just thinking about our humanity that we all share too, which I think is such a beautiful, simple thought, but that should bring everybody together on our planet, like and to work towards that. And that was also when I said to Louvre. That's why I'm getting excited about to Louvre now, because that the director there, Laurence Decar, who after Glenn Lowry or along with Glenn Lowry is like to me one of the best directors of museums too. And she's bringing down the collection, like where she mixes like geographies and timelines, and she thinks about it about like between oceanic art and medieval art and Asian art, like they all share a humanity, and to bring that, and so there was this new gallery that she opened. It's called the Gallery of the Five Continent, the Five Continent, the Five Continent, yeah, the five big parts of the world, and it just opened in December, just before I left. And Marlene Dumas made a site-specific commission for it with all these faces. And it's the first permanent commission for the Louvre of a contemporary artist that will stay permanently. And that's the entrance to this Galerie des Cinq Continents. And it's a new entrance too, away from the pyramid. And it's where they have put really all like the art from all the different times together. When I saw it, it wasn't open to the public yet, so they didn't have their signages yet, but it felt so refreshing and so for the future. And she talked about it like this is the humanity that is shared between no matter where you lived and what time. And this is what the world needs now more, is celebrate a shared humanity. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you said we just need to say these things. And that's part of a practice that I've engaged in the last couple of years too. And I talk about it as sort of straight up proselytizing about art. And we have to give voice to these things that we want to be true in the world. And art is an amazing vehicle for showing people that there's commonalities between people, regardless of where they live or when they lived. And we can, from that, be better and do better and make the world better. And that aspiration, I think, has to be said, because otherwise the opposite happens.
Right, which it feels is happening right now, right? Like that's why it feels we need to speak up louder and clearer and in very simple terms like that. Like it has to stay like a simple message like that, which I felt. And for the Louvre, like this old museum, the biggest museum, encyclopedic museum, to embrace that is very progressive, I
Yes.
think, of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I'll follow up with you because she'd be great to have on the podcast to talk about that.
Oh
So,
my God, it would be amazing.
right? Yeah. Okay. So you talked a little bit earlier about coming into a project at a moment where an artist sort of is plateauing, not necessarily aesthetically, but they want to do something bigger and they need help with that. And that supporting ambitious new work really requires risk, right? It's risks of time, resources, audience attention. And I'm curious, I mean, one of the things that makes someone a great entrepreneur, of course, is having a high risk tolerance. And I have a really high risk tolerance. I'm wondering what you think about risk as both a collector and a patron, and what kind of risks do you think are worth taking right now in the art world?
Yeah, exactly. That's why if you meet the artists, you can tell a lot too, like if they're ready for this. And so our research definitely looks deep, and there was a few meetings before we engage. But it's good for artists too to be asked these tough questions, and it's good for them to grow too. But we definitely do this risk assessment, or like, is this the right moment? Is this the right moment to do this? And yeah, with my collection, I do that. I suppose I do that with my collection too, in ways by talking also then to the galleries, who are an important component when that I work with when I collect for buying art. But at the same time, I do want to take risk. Like I'm not averse to taking risk, and I am absolutely also. I have a lot of sculpture. I have a lot of stuff that comes off the wall. Like I'm totally open, also in going into different formats and putting different formats together. Yeah, and I know that certain things like won't appreciate so much, but it's such a great piece to live with. I'm thinking of like this curtain I have by Daniel Stegeman Mangrane. He's an he's the Spanish artist, but relational aesthetics, younger. And he did these curtains like of the spa in Spain, they have them hanging at the door, like for inside, outside, sort of out of metal. And then he cut these sort of organic forms out of them. So you walk through them. And so I have one hanging downstairs because my house is all open, and so to make one of these openings a little smaller, one of these curtains hangs, and it's made for the opening. It looks great. But is that a piece I think will increase in value? I mean, I don't care if it increases in value. It's just such a great piece to live with in my environment. I don't I don't care I don't care about that. But for certain pieces, if I'm gonna spend a certain number of dollars, I will want to know, yeah, will that retain value or yeah. So as an
Informed risk.
investor in that sense, like that, yeah, that you don't throw it out like that either.
So I want to ask you one more thing about Vega. And as you're thinking about maybe growing the foundation, maybe it would grow in new geographies or new formats, or I'm curious, like what frontiers, whether it would be medium or audience or space or idea, feels particularly exciting to you right now? Things that you want to know more about.
Yeah, we will be 5 years old next year. So we're working towards something bigger for that, like more a festival, like a multi-day event where we invite speakers. And our dream is to, and I'm going to say it out loud because then that different institutions in Toronto will be part of it and have film up and we'll all collaborate with each other. Because in a city too, like the collaborations often are also guarded and not that happening.
I know.
So yeah, so to do something where all the institutions collaborate in the city and have work at the same moment and where we bring really good speakers in, and then it would also be part of an opening exhibition, a group exhibition at the power plant. So that would be our first group exhibition then too, where we probably put in a little bit of the works that we have been collecting with probably some newer works too. Yeah, so that's an exciting new thing, like to think of it as a festival, but a space. I'm so not interested in. I don't want to be tied down to a space. It seems right away I become a bit claustrophobic by the thought of that. Are you waiting for people to come to you and you always in that space? I don't know.
It's interesting, that it's one of the things that, I mean, I've spent 20 years as a museum director, and the two times I've left now, it's because I just didn't want to be tied to a specific space. I didn't want to have to only think about one location, and I wanted there to be more porousness. So I understand that, and it's interesting. I often feel claustrophobic in strange environments. Not strange, but like things that wouldn't be claustrophobic for other people. So I think
Yeah,
it's
I
like
get
an
very
emotional state.
more impatient like that. And I find I get that a bit with galleries because galleries expect you to come and see yet again a new show, a new show. I think galleries could really reinvent their models
Yeah.
too, because I mean, galleries, and especially the bigger galleries, do very good shows, very interesting shows and museum quality shows. But I do feel sometimes like I have to go and see this show because they want me. I mean, I'm close to them. I have to, but then I feel like kind of not excited, and I won't feel good about being in that show. I know it, but I will sometimes do it just because one has to. But so I know that feeling of that what you're describing. Yeah, I have that very much.
It's interesting because when anything becomes an obligation, for me, it's removed of like the power of desire, I guess. And so to be able to do things out of reverence or desire rather than out of obligation, I think is one of the things I'm looking for.
Right, right.
All right, so we are close to the end, and so we do kind of a lightning round, which is kind of a one-word answer, if you can, to some questions, and then we end with not a one word, but the answer to the question that I ask everyone about art and why it matters. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Short answers. A film or video work that made you first fall in love with the medium.
Human Mask by Pierre Huyghe.
A city that feels indispensable to your relationship with art.
Paris. Paris. Yeah, that's easy.
The last work of art you saw that stopped you in your tracks.
I mean, literally, that is Lucy Raven, Murderous Bar here in Toronto at the power plant.
Great. A favorite place in your home where you live with art.
I have many, but it's probably my salon in Paris because I can look out the window and see the Paris street and then the light of the pharmacy below, that green light of the pharmacy cross shines in the evening until 8 p.m. when it closes. And that green light lighting in that room, especially the aquarium or Nairi Bagranian's, one of her big sculptures that hangs in the window. I mean, just to see that light come in and really energize the art is always like, yeah, one of my favorite moments. And I always, if people are there, I always point it out, like this is as good as it gets. Like I get a free art moment like this every night when that light comes on. And it's very relational aesthetics too, like
Yeah.
to sort of have something like that. And then here in Toronto, I have a Papa Bear chair that I love to sit on, looking at my garden. I have a bird feeder there, which now in winter, there's so many different birds. And I look out and I see all these birds. There's always a few cardinals, like those beautiful red cardinals, lots of chickadees, like so many cute birds. And yeah, just looking out and sitting in a comfortable chair like that is definitely one of my glorious moments to.
Yeah. I love birds too. One artist that you think more people should know about right now.
Lotus Kang, she's a Canadian artist. She just did 52 Walker last year. She did this beautiful multiple for the new museum just now that they're gonna sell for their opening. But yeah, I really like her work, and I think I mean, she already has had some important shows. She's slated for much more.
Ritual that keeps your creative thinking sharp.
Oh, my ritual now, my new habit since perhaps it's been a year and a half, 2 years, is I write in the mornings. I sit down and I write, not most mornings, and I write about my previous day or just things I want to remember or I want to sort of really rethink. And I do write in French, so that's also because it forces me to practice my French and think through concepts in French. Yeah.
Nice. I love that. One museum or institution that you'd love Vega to collaborate with in the future.
The Louvre.
Of course.
I mean, we've collaborated with
Yeah.
Stuart at MoMA too, more with the new museum. I mean, yeah, we've already collaborated with all my favorites, but the Louvre, yeah.
Great. An idea about art that you've changed your mind about over time.
I definitely realized at one point in time that I didn't want things in heavy frames anymore, that became very non-engaging to me and heavy. So I asked the artist, one particular one, to take it out of the frame, and it looks so much better. It's a photogram, so it's not hanging in the light. It doesn't have to be in one of those big, heavy frames. I started collecting then, like less photography because that has to be in a frame. And I don't think I've bought much in frames since I realized that
So
I
interesting.
I
Yeah.
didn't like. Yeah, there's something between the viewer and the art that the frame like keeps you away from, or yeah. Wolfgang Tillmans for that, the way he doesn't frame most of his
Yes.
photos, right? And just hangs them flat on the wall.
Yeah. He has a great show in LA right now.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And lastly, why does art matter?
And why does art matter? That question I knew was coming, and I love that question because it's very, I mean, art matters because one cannot imagine life without art. Like life would be so one-dimensional, so material, so boring. Like, yeah, art is 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 life. It's life in a way, and it's an essential part of life. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Fantastic. I'm so glad to spend time with you today. I
Thank you.
really,
That was fun.
yeah, super fun. Super fun.